The NFL is set to enact a new policy for the 2018 season that requires all players and personnel on the field to stand during the national anthem. Last season, of course, hundreds of players knelt during the anthem to protest racial injustice and police brutality. The movement was started by former San Francisco 49er quarterback Colin Kaepernick the year before. Now the new policy says players must stand or stay in the locker room. President Trump applauded the policy in an interview on Fox.
I think it's good. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. Well, you shouldn't be playing. You shouldn't be there. Maybe you shouldn't be in the country. You have to stand proudly for the national anthem. And the NFL owners did the right thing if that's what they've done.
Bill Reiter is the host of Reiter's Block on CBS Sports HQ. He now joins me to break down the policy. Great to see you, Bill. A lot of backlash from players on this. Have any said, I'm going to kneel, I'm going to sit, I'm going to stay in the locker room? Has anyone gone that far?
We haven't gotten any of those responses yet, but there's certainly a sense around the NFL from players that this is going to be a policy that makes many of the players feel more contemptuous toward the owners, not less. Now, whether or not that leads to these gentlemen deciding to go onto the field, which they can still do, and kneel, which would result in a fine for the teams would be allowed to in turn fine those players, we just don't know yet.
Okay, so by the end of the year, hardly anyone was kneeling. The TV networks really minimized their coverage of it towards the end of the year. Why would the NFL go and kind of stir this hornet's nest? Why this policy?
Yeah, it's a great question because it's the $1 million, it may be in the long term, the $1 billion question for the National Football League. And I think the answer is what we just heard from the president. There is so much pressure that came from the White House, and it was so effective. In the NFL, whatever the various owners' views on kneeling during the anthem, and they're varied, there is some consensus that it's not good for the league, that fans focus on this, feel divided by this. I don't know if they've accomplished this, but they certainly, the NFL owners and the NFL commissioner, are hoping that this policy puts to rest kneeling, talk of patriotism, a red-blue divide in the NFL, and they can get back to football.
They said it was a unanimous vote among the owners, but there seemed to be at least some pushback as it was announced.
Yeah, so the owner of the 49ers, the Niners abstained from voting, and we've already gotten, there's not a lot of information that's come out, a lot of responses, but executives with the New York Jets here in New York City have said, we'll take the fine, but if our players choose to kneel or do something else during the anthem, we will not in turn fine them. So it's really interesting. There's not a universal perspective on this, and now, instead of being an NFL issue, it's going to be an individual market, individual NFL organization decision whether or not to fine their players. And obviously, if they choose, like the Jets, not to fine their players, some players may interpret that as an invitation or at least an opportunity, if they so choose, to do that with their team's blessing.
And some players have said the very fact we're talking about this points to the success of their protest. Their protest is about racial injustice. They say police inequality or police brutality. And we saw this video released yesterday of Milwaukee Buck, a basketball player, shown being in the confrontation with Milwaukee police. The Milwaukee police chief has since apologized. This happened back in January. Charges were never filed in this case. He was parking in a spot that wasn't a spot. How does this play into this whole discussion?
Yeah, no, the timing is remarkable, and give the Milwaukee Bucks credit. Their response was forceful. It wasn't just in support of Sterling Brown, the player who plays for the Bucks in the NBA. It was, this speaks to a deeper problem in the black community, in the minority community, in this country, in Milwaukee, and that's the kind of response that certainly the NFL has not been able to have, a universally strong "we're with our players" response, and there's a lot of reasons for that, but it does underscore to not just NFL players, but professional athletes and fans across the country who are of a certain viewpoint that this is a real problem that needs to be addressed. And more than a couple athletes that I talked to yesterday said that it's a reminder that the NFL policy is not going to stop folks from protesting if they feel like it can lead to solutions from the things we saw in Milwaukee.
Okay, Bill Reiter, thanks so much for joining us.
You're welcome.